Okay.
Hey, Chris.
Hello, Jensen. So I just want to...
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. Nice to see all of you.
I want to give you a sense of my preparation.
Okay.
So
the two of us have been preparing for over 40 years.
Yeah.
And you're going to be prepared for this talk.
Yeah. So,
can we just chat?
No, we're going to chat. So I was looking something up, and I got taken to a website on Amazon. Do you know there's a couple dozen books? They may be pamphlets, they may be reprints on you. So I just want to tell you, I'm happy to be here and not having to pay to talk to you. The other thing I came to realize is you no longer have your jacket.
Chris and I are best of friends. And now I realize it's just a privilege for you to be near me.
It is, true.
And weirdo.
Well, I just want you to know your coat is no longer
I wouldn't
Amazon.
be here if not for Chris.
Yeah.
That is for sure.
You owe it all to me.
I do.
Well, to set, we're going to talk about some of the origins.
Chris was my VP of engineering, my first VP of engineering. So he did the work. And he did a lot of it.
It is true. It is true. Well, so when we were getting going, the other founder, Curtis Bream, and I were at Sun, and we were leaving, and we called our buddy Jensen, who was at a company called LSI Logic, and said, "Hey, Jensen, we want to go be consultants and build a chip to help another company show off their product. Can you help us write a contract?" Because Jensen knew something about business, and we certainly didn't. And I guess I'm curious, what did you think about that? Because that turned into NVIDIA, this simple request to help us. This predates Denny's.
This is where we're starting. 33 years ago.
It was.
I barely remember.
It was probably
here's a
88. No, 92.
Yeah.
Just summer 92.
Yeah, 92. Let's see what was happening at the time. So what was happening at the time was the PC revolution hadn't started yet. Remember, Windows 3 was just out. I think 3.1 wasn't even out yet. It was 3.0, and so the Pentium microprocessor wasn't announced. PCI Express didn't exist. CPUs had this thing called a front side bus and a back side bus. 3D graphics didn't exist, but we knew that computer graphics was really important to the future of computers, and so that's kind of in the background. and Chris Curtis worked at Sun Microsystems, and I was working for a company called LSI Logic, and I was helping Chris and Curtis with their graphics chip, and I was helping Andy Bechtolsheim on the SPARC 1. And those were kind of the heydays of the workstation time. And that was within Sun. Outside of Sun was this in this environment that I was describing, that the PC was wanting to happen. And the real computers were being built in companies like Sun Microsystems, and digital at the time was still a thing, and so on and so forth. And so when Chris and Curtis came to me to talk about their idea, their thinking about leaving Sun, the question is, what should they do? And that was really kind of the beginning of the conversation of what should they do. I was perfectly happy working at LSI Logic, and we already had 2 kids, and Chris had 2 kids. Parker hadn't come yet, and so I think the conversations kind of started from there.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way I remember it. We evolved from let's do this for somebody else to, no, wait a minute, maybe we should do it for ourselves. And it turns out we felt we knew something in this evolving world with the new windowing system for Microsoft that most people had experience, but in the workstation world, windowing systems were well known, and we had accelerated graphics in a windowing system.
Yeah.
So we thought we knew something. So we ended up going from working on somebody else's thing to deciding we were going to do something for ourselves, and then the Denny's story starts, which you have now made quite famous.
Yeah, well, Denny's is a good restaurant. You guys should all try it. It's America's diner. I am I still consider Denny's my first company. I don't think people who wash dishes consider the restaurants they work for their first company, but I've kind of always felt I was employed there somehow. Let's think about I think it's interesting, Chris, what was happening around the world and the different philosophies of computer architecture and the choice that we made. Because at the time, remember, in 1992, 1993, it was the workstation industry was vibrant. The PC was burgeoning, and it was kind of starting, kind of a mess, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. And the first PC that even we bought, it was kind of it was a mess, and we were kind of amazed that it worked at all. And so here we are in this industry, building computers that we thought were properly built, Unix operating systems and virtual memory, and all of those kind of concepts, windowing systems, were already quite well established. Now, there was another backdrop that remained very important, and probably one of the most important things that happened to us was the conversation around, should everything be done on a CPU and programmable architectures and general purpose programming, and how do people think about accelerators? The idea and what Chris and Curtis were working on was a system that fundamentally relied on accelerators. And so there was a difference in perspective. At the time, there were many workstation companies, in fact. There was Sun Microsystems, of course. There was Apollo. There was Ardent Computer, which became Dana Computer, Stellar. And each one of these computer companies had a different perspective on how should memory be organized, where should the software be running, should it be accelerators, should it be general purpose programmable, and how should the APIs be represented, and so these kind of questions are fundamental computer architecture questions, and you could see that the world was somewhat split. Then all of a sudden, Windows 95 came, and the PC took off, became the most successful consumer electronics product in history, and was the only consumer electronics products I ever remembered where people waited in line, waited right outside retail stores waiting to buy Windows 95, a software that was packaged, as you guys all recall. And so the PC takes off, and then the next thing that happened was Pentium. The Pentium microprocessor came out and started this next 30 years of what was called Moore's Law, the advancement of microprocessors. And the entire world shifted, from this dialogue of general purpose computing versus accelerators to 100% focused on general purpose computing. And that's where all of the R&D budget went. That's where all of the interest went, and that's where all of the budget of a computer went. And of course, Intel did incredibly well. The Pentium microprocessor became probably one of the first really branded technology thing in the world. And meanwhile, our perspective was that acceleration had its place, and there are applications that wouldn't be possible if not for acceleration. And that was a hard perspective to go get funded on, frankly, and that was a hard perspective to get customers to believe, because all of the energy was focused on Pentium microprocessors.
And also, until that time, there was really no ability to supplement the CPU. You didn't have access to the memory. You didn't have access to high-speed I/O.
There was no Pentium.
But all of a sudden, all those workstation things migrated to the PC. They had 32-bit high-speed buses. You had a deep memory. You had a new buses that allowed interconnect.
Right. Without PCI Express, where would you stick things?
So all the elements for acceleration were coming together, even if the concept of acceleration hadn't caught on yet.
Yeah. And so that's kind of the early seed. I think I'm trying to get to the fact that the early seed of the company was in the context of the development of this new computer system, this new market called personal computers. In the context of general purpose computing versus accelerators, all of the funding going towards general purpose computing, and yet we had a perspective that we would like to build computers to do things that normal computers can't, and normal computers are CPU based or general purpose computing based systems. And so we started to evolve from accelerator, which is 3D graphics accelerator, to accelerated computing, and that journey took us here.
Yeah. So the one of our early experiences is our first product, which we were quite proud of, turned out to be a pretty much abysmal introduction to the market. I mean, it sold some immediately and then sold nothing. And I actually think our success is somewhat born from early failure, which is not unfamiliar to a lot of entrepreneurs.
I would have liked to avoid that entire first 3 years, to be honest.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Yeah. So here, this is what happened. Let me first tell you what the right answer is. The right answer is it's a technology called inverse texture mapping, and you draw three-dimensional scenes by breaking down the geometry into triangles. The reason why triangle, because the triangle always has one normal, and the reason why you want that one normal is you want to compute where is the direction of light coming from and where it's going to get reflected to.
It's always in a plane.
It's always on a plane. It's easy to compute the normal to a triangle because it's always on a plane. And it's hard to do that if the surface is curved. Okay? And so anyways, there are some basic reasons why 3D graphics should be based on triangles. And the right way of doing texturing is called inverse texturing. And the way that you decide what's an object in front or behind another object is using this simple technique called Z-buffering. Well, triangles, inverse texturing, Z-buffering. The technology we chose, we invented, was called curved surfaces, not triangles, forward texture mapping versus the right answer, inverse. There's only two answers. We chose the wrong one. And we chose no Z-buffers versus Z-buffers. In every single decision, there were only two choices. So here's all these.
Just in the interest of complete transparency, we optimized for things that were not real at the end.
And so,
but we were wrong.
Okay, listen. Smart people do smart things. Smart people do smart things, and we made those choices for very good reasons. But I just think it's funny.
Yes.
That out of three choices, whether A or B, we made three choices exactly wrong.
Yeah.
How do you explain that?
Dumb luck.
Dumb luck. So anyways, but what Chris is saying is that what really is amazing is it's the same company, and we were one out of 50 companies to make that choice. The other 49 did it right. That's a miracle. And we are now the only surviving 3D graphics company in the world. We've contributed more to 3D graphics than just about any company in history. And yep. And that tells you something. I'm not sure what it tells you, but it tells you something. Chris, how do you?
I think it tells us we learned our lesson.
Good thing that this is a couch. I'll lay down and we should ask ourselves,
what
happened?
Let's do some
Let our
therapy.
feelings out. You had to start 33 years ago. Now all kinds of feelings are pouring out. I'll be in a cold sweat here pretty soon.
So we turned that disaster where we actually generated good technology, bad product. And we used the learnings from that, which, we weren't in business to satisfy our own desire to get our technology out there. But
Chris, the thing that people are blown away by, and this is the amazing thing about Chris. And so this is what happened. So
I'm
here
supposed
we are.
to be interviewing you.
It's all about you. Now I want to talk about you. It's more interesting. And so here, this is what happened. So we built this thing, NV1, which is all these technology that I described. The product formation is kind of like a car has these doors and has a trunk and a hood, and it's formulated in a way that most people think is a modern car. Well, it turns out our car didn't have 4 wheels. Our car had like 6 wheels, and it was all formulated wrong. Okay, so not only was the technology wrong, the product formulation was wrong. And we did the first version, and so we came to the conclusion that the reason why we didn't succeed in the first version is we didn't make that first version good enough, so we made the second version. And the second version, we thought, gosh, maybe we'll do a third version, all doing it exactly wrong. Okay? And so it took us like 2.5, 3 years to figure out that maybe it's just wrong. and all these smart people are just doing it wrong. And so we came to the conclusion where we're doing it wrong, and we decided we're going to go do it right. This is the part that's a miracle. On the day that we decided that we're going to go do it right, it turns out none of us knew how to do it right. We only knew how to do it wrong. And so, luckily, there was this other company called Silicon Graphics, the world leader at the time, and many of our colleagues that work at NVIDIA now, and many of our employees that work at NVIDIA now, they wrote this book while they were at Silicon Graphics of how to do it right. And so I didn't have very much money on me, but I think I had a couple $100 on me. So I ran down to the bookstore, and bought all of that book. I bought 3 textbooks because that's all the money I had. I bought 3 textbooks, I brought it back, and I gave it to the engineers. Gave one to Chris and gave one to a couple of other engineers. And so they started reading. Now, just think. We started a company to do 3D graphics, and the money that we raised to do 3D graphics, we had to use to go buy a book, like putting ourselves in college, And so we went and bought a book. We came back, Chris read it, and we built the world's best 3D graphics processor. And by the way, that lesson, the fact that we can learn almost anything, smart people can learn almost anything and make a contribution, that lesson permeates our company today. So when artificial intelligence came along, self-driving cars came along, now robotics came along, the attitude of the company is, how hard could it be? It turns out it's super hard. In every single case, it's turned out it was super hard. But almost every single time, in my mind, we're probably about 3 textbooks away.
Well,
we just got to.
Well, nothing scares us now, I guess.
Yeah, nothing scares us. Nothing is that hard. And of course, you don't read the book and then you implement the book. You read the book to be informed by prior art. And then after that, the genius of the company, Chris, the engineers, the genius of the company really comes through. And that's what makes NVIDIA great.
Well, one thing you could say, when we look back on our history, we've made those leaps a number of times, and I give you the credit for directing us there. But how do you decide to turn the R&D budget behind a CUDA, behind AI, when there's $0 billion market in front of you? No one's done it, so it's not like it's proven. We may or may not know how to do it. There may or may not even be a textbook to tell us how to do it. But you got to make this call 10 years in advance of the market coming. Where do you get that insight from?
Well, the fundamental principles, the first principles of almost everything that we do, answers 3 questions really. The first question is it insanely hard to do? And because if it's not hard to do, then it's not worthy of the people that are at the company to do it. And this is this is really, really important because at the core, what makes NVIDIA great is it's a place where amazing people come to work. And we promise them, and you've heard me say it over and over again, you heard me promise them, our job is to create an environment where amazing people get to do their life's work. Well, and if you just dissect everything I just said, amazing people only want to do their life's work. Amazing people don't want to go do work that other people have already done. So they want to do something unique. They want to do unique work. And on the other hand, once you bring the people here, if you want it to grow virally and you want amazing people to attract other amazing people, then the only way you could do that is to choose work that is worthy of being their life's work. And so one, it has to be insanely hard to do. And then second, it has to be work that's somewhat, our destiny. In the sense that if not for us, it won't get done. If not for us, it won't get done. But because of us, it can get done. And so that's, in marketing speak, it's like finding your core competence. Does that make sense? I just said in very human words 2 sentences that you can find them in business books and marketing books. You can find them in company building books. But I simply described it in ways that is human. It's worthy of inspiring other people, and inspires us. And then the third thing is, it has to be sufficiently entertaining. It has to be sufficiently fun to do, because one, it's hard to do. And two, it's never been done before. And three, if it's not fun, then when you're failing along the way, and you're struggling and suffering and all the pain the pain and suffering that goes along with all good journeys, you're going to give up. And so unless you're propelled by some sense of purpose or joy, or the entertainment value is too high, or it's just it's hard to, because you're not making money. Right? Because most of the things that we're doing, it takes a decade to get there. And so for a decade, you're not making any money. And so you're not being propelled by some financial reason, and you're not getting much positive feedback from the marketplace, because there are no market and no customers, and most of the customers you talk to don't want it, and or they want it and you're bad at doing it. There's a whole bunch of reasons, and so you're going to be failing along the way. That pain and suffering can only be overcome through some really strong sense of purpose, or it's just way too fun.
Yeah. So our journey has been one of stutter steps and successes, and slipping back, and then some really grand wins. How has your leadership style changed between scrappy startup Jensen and supreme overlord AI Jensen?
Yeah, Chris and I have been in meetings together more than any two human, probably, and I don't think I've changed at all. Have you? That's kind of that wasn't a compliment for myself. I was I'm more skillful today than before. I don't know that I'm more artful, but I am more skillful.
Maybe less tactful. You know what you want now.
I'm tactful. I'm just straightforward. Look, if you tell somebody, if you tell your company what you want, it might not happen. But if you don't tell your company what you want, it will never happen.
It won't happen.
And so I think you should always put it on the table. But I always put my ideas on the table, not because they're therefore the final idea. They're hardly ever the final idea, as you know. I put it on the table so that people could attack it. And so I just set it on the table and watch other people beat it to death. And what comes out of it is something better. And so I think you could innovate in a couple of ways. You could just sit in an empty room and just and have ideas just kind of formulate, I guess, and people throw it on the table, and eventually you create something out of nothing. I tend not to feel that that's the best way to do it. I tend to think that maybe presenting a potential opportunity as weakly formed as you like. Put it on. Somebody has to have the courage to put an idea on the table to be criticized, and I've always never had any problem being criticized, and so I think if you're an innovator, if you're an artist, if you're a designer, and if you're a strategist, if you're afraid of being criticized, it's very difficult to innovate. It's very difficult to have good ideas, and I think we meander, Chris. I think we meander through from inspirational or an inspiring idea, but we meander through setbacks and advances and setbacks because we're iterating on what is a good idea at its core, but nobody knows exactly how it's going to turn out. And we're not afraid to making progress. We're not afraid of making progress even when we're uncertain. And that's one of the strengths of the company. We're willing to kick the ball down the road, even when we're not exactly sure it's going to be the right kick. You know, a lot of companies, you just won't fund the project unless you're completely certain it's going to have an ROI. And yet in our company, we have never once done a spreadsheet with a risk reward or risk, ROI analysis or some kind of CAGR, or never happened. Not one time. And we've got, 20 incredibly, people think we have, one giant great business. We have 20 incredibly great businesses. And each one of these businesses has technology element to it, product element to it, strategy element to it, ecosystem, industry, and they're all different. And every single one of them started at zero. And the market was at zero, and we were at zero. And now we're, we like $0 billion markets because you're instantly a gorilla. Do you know what I'm saying? If the market is zero, then you're investing as large as anybody else. Okay? And if it stays at zero for a long time, I actually like it because it gives us a chance to develop our own skills and our own sensibility and some domain expertise. You don't want it to remain $0 billion forever, but if it remains $0 billion between 0 and 5 years, I actually don't think that's short enough. Between 5 and 10 years is pretty great. Between 10 and 15 years, that's a lot of suffering. And so, but I think that we're not afraid of doing those kind of investments, and we kick it down the road. We pivot.
It's kind of funny. There's no plan that we've initiated that what we concluded was the original plan.
Right.
Not even close.
Right.
Not even close. I remember one time we had a marketing guy come in and make us sign a product document. This is the specs. We're not going to change them. And it was like it had a half-life of a week. And that was the stupidest thing we ever did. Well, there's probably other stupid things, but to commit to something as the market and the world changes
Call that
around
the
you.
stupidest thing we've ever done? I don't know.
Well, yeah, I take it back. It's just one of many.
33 years. The list is long. So a lot of companies have this thing called market requirement document. We don't do that anymore. We did it once, and then we go through the approval process. And every single organization, at the time calling them organizations, kind of silly, but every group would review it and commit to it and approve it. And that is the worst thing you could possibly do.
Before the ink was dry, it was obsolete.
Yeah, it's horrible for an organization. It's horrible for innovation. It's horrible in a world where things are changing all the time. It forces you to pretend like you know the future when you don't. It forces you to sign up for something that somehow you're bullied into, and by other organizations. So there's a lot of management techniques that many large companies do to hold people accountable, to tie it to their compensation, so that they can somehow build up promises and commitments layer at a time, and eventually you make a commitment to the CEO. We don't do any of that. We've torn all of that stuff out of our system, and we don't ever bully somebody into making you a commitment when we know for darn sure they can't possibly know. And so we ask people to help us understand what are the principles by which they, what are the assumptions by which they, what were the dependencies by which they arrive at some conclusion, and from that we reason about what's the best that we can do. Best performance, or best cost, or best schedule, or best weight, or best anything, best time, or whatever it is that can be done. And we call that concept, the speed of light concept. And once the organization understands what is possible, and everybody understands what's possible in every single direction, then the rest of it is simply trade-off decisions, right? We might not decide to push one particular parameter to the limit so that we can benefit from something else, because you only have so much resources, so much time, so much money, so many people. So everything can't be perfect. But if we understood what perfection was everywhere, then we can make the right decisions. But if people were to prejudge a lot of that just so that they can make us promises on this and this and that, by the time that we get a proposal, it's so layered in with so much other people's assumptions that you really have no idea what's possible. And so I think the concept of speed of light in our company was probably one of the best management innovation ideas that the world's ever seen.
Yeah, and it removes you from thinking incrementally. I can make it better, but how much better? Is that a little better good or a lot better good?
And this is the concept of continuous improvement. The concept of continuous improvement is really terrific. The idea that you would refine and improve your craft over a long period of time is a fantastic idea. And I love that purveyors of fried chicken and ramen and pizza and furniture makers, and they have this sense of craft that they refine over time. I love that. But in the world of technology, it is completely nonsense. And the reason for that is because the idea of continuous improvement says it only matters that you're improving from last year. Okay, so people sign up for whatever we were last year, we'll make it 10% better and 10% better and 10% better. Technology doesn't really want to work like that. Technology really wants to work, and the people in this organization, this room here, you're trying to innovate. You're trying to do something that disrupts existing capabilities. You don't go, a car. We're in the right in this. Did I learn that Henry Ford had a vacation home here? Is that right?
That's what we heard.
Okay, so okay, good. So we'll use car as an example. I mean, the car wasn't a continuous improvement of a horse, and so that's the problem with continuous improvement. So inside our company, we don't start from continuous improvement. I don't care how bad you were last year. It doesn't change the fact, just because you had a D last year, doesn't mean we can't have an A this year. You don't go from a D to a C to a B. You're out of business. So you don't even have to try. And so the idea that we were incredibly bad last year at doing something doesn't change the fact that we had to start from 0 this year. And 0 starts with A. 0 doesn't start with F. 0 starts with A. And so speed of light, what's perfection? And so we got to ask ourselves, what are the things that we have to do to be perfect, to achieve speed of light? That concept keeps your company always as lean as possible, with as little bureaucracy as possible. Everybody thinking from 0 all the time. And then there's a budgeting system. It's called zero-based budgeting. Have you guys heard that? And zero-based budgeting is always still the best way of thinking. And so.
Well, besides thinking speed of light, there's a lot of other things that you do that I think are a little unusual for CEOs. You have a really large staff. You're really transparent about your expectations and the priorities that you want.
If any of them were any good, I would only have one.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
You don't do one-on-ones.
Yeah, right.
Everything's out in the light of day.
Yeah.
And it serves us well. But how'd you come up with these? I mean, what got you there?
Okay, here's some. If you read the management books, they're all well-natured and they're well-intended. But let's just pick them apart. Let's use one of them. You never give people criticism in front of others. You take them aside, and you set up a comfortable chair like this, and you schedule a time, and you sit down and you go, I got to talk to you, Chris. And I just think that the pump and the circumstance are incompatible. That is not proportional response. Every day we're making mistakes. If every single mistake requires me to take somebody aside, whether it's my mistake or somebody else's mistake, we have to sit down and schedule a one-on-one so that we can have a heart-to-heart talk. The only heart-to-heart, I only want 2 heart-to-heart talks with somebody. On the day they join, on the day they leave. In the middle, I don't want any heart-to-hearts. Do you?
No, sir.
And so there are no heart-to-heart talks. And notice heart-to-heart talks. It's emotional. It's personal. These mistakes aren't personal. They're not emotional. It's just a mistake. So that's number one. And so when a mistake is made, or something could be better, some criticism, and I track them, and I give them. Let's just you got to just deliver right there. That's as much as emotional content that needs to be provided. It's not a heart-to-heart talk. This is not a destruction of your ego. This is not anything. It's not going to get reflected in your review. It's not going to get reflected in your compensation. It won't get reflected anywhere. I've just got to get it off my chest. I just need you to know it, number one. Number two, I need everybody else to know it. And this is a great insight. You know, you're sitting in a meeting and all this strategy conversation is being talked about, and somebody says something that is just fundamentally wrong. Now, there's a lot of good ideas. There are a lot of good ideas. And then there's ideas that are uncertain to be good and then become good. And then there's good old-fashioned bad ideas. Okay? I just gave you NVIDIA's founding, the 3 choices we made. Smart people made 3 bad decisions. I'll go back, I'll tell you, if I were to go back now, I would make those 3 exactly the opposite. Okay? There's no question I would do that. Having said that, if something is just a bad idea and something is said and you don't react to it at all, you have just endorsed that bad idea. You ought to make sure that bad idea is spoken to, that the idea is spoken to, and that everybody understands why it was a bad idea. You reason about that bad idea in front of everybody. Now everybody learns something. And so the purpose of leadership is teaching. And so we're reasoning all the time, constantly, 24/7. I'm reasoning in front of everybody all the time. This is, so we listen to everybody's ideas, and then we have to, how do we think about these ideas? You've got to reason about it. You're criticizing it. When you're reasoning about this one, you're reasoning about that one, you're criticizing it. And so you're criticizing the ideas. You've got to get it out in front of everybody, and then move on. And so one of the reasons why I love the fact that we don't have one-on-ones is because you're now delivering a lesson to one person instead of the company. We're trying to build a company. Number 2, oftentimes those one-on-ones turn into gossip sessions. And I hate gossip. No, let me say it again. I love gossip. Just not about the company. You know what I'm saying? I love gossip about other people's company. And so I don't want to create a culture where I spoke to Jensen and Jensen said, that's a horrible thing. The rest of that sentence is going to go badly, and I hate it. And so whatever needs to be said, I should be able to say in front of everybody. The reason why we have a large management team is because we want to keep information moving in the company as fast as possible. I don't believe there are that many things that are need to know. There aren't that many things that I wouldn't tell you. Unless it puts you in harm's way in some reason, why would the employees of the company be less well off, lesser productive, if they didn't understand the company's challenges, opportunities, strategies, threats, so on and so forth? And so I want to make sure that all of the employees know it, and that's the reason why during company meetings I explain these things very, very clearly, very publicly. And it doesn't make us weak. Every company's got challenges. It doesn't make us somehow weaker to say that we have challenges, we have problems we have to solve. So there's just problems. There's challenges we have, and so I love being able to explain that to people. And the amazing thing is when you're surrounded by amazing people, Chris, and you tell people what your challenges are. Just like when you come to me, you ask me, what are problems? I'll tell you my problems. Surprisingly, it gets solved. And so if we tell all of our people what are top challenges on our mind and things that we're worried about, surprisingly, it gets solved. And so keeping it to ourselves isn't a helpful thing.
It's turned out to be an amazing way to cut down bureaucracy and fiefdoms.
Yeah.
If everybody knows everything, then information is not a weapon
Look
to
at
be yielded
the
on
way,
somebody
look
else.
At the way, that's right. Yeah. Look at the way modern organizations are created. You got one person on top, and then it tapers like that. And that's the reason why there's about 45 layers of middle management. And then the people down here are doing the work. Information is getting mutated all the way along. They're just getting mutated and distorted, and by the time that you're done, it just makes no sense. That organization was created so that some emperor in some city could have a network of generals and armies, isn't that right? and information had to travel by horse, or by feet, from one country to another country. Well, these days we got email. And so the fact that we don't have an organization that reflects the technology that we use to communicate sounds insane.
Yeah.
And so I think one. Number two, the people that report to the CEO should be, you would think, should be the most capable, the most mature, the most, right? Requires the least supervision. And so why is it that the CEO only has 4 direct reports? How does that make any sense? And so I have 60 direct reports. I've never had one-on-ones with anybody. The only time I've ever had a one-on-one with Chris is right now. Okay.
And I'm thankful for it.
You and me both. And so, Chris, we need to have a heart-to-heart. Except we're having a heart-to-heart in public. And so why would we ever have a one-on-one? I've never written Chris a review. I don't remember anything that he's done that causes me to want to write it down at the end of the year. It's kind of like writing a review for Lori and Melody, our wives. At the end of the year, hey honey, can we sit down?
Let's have a talk.
I think we need to have a heart-to-heart talk. And I've sent the kids away. It's just the 2 of us today. And listen, 1, 2. That's ridiculous. I don't even remember all my grievances towards you. And
there's been plenty.
What? Well, I've had many grievances towards you. I just don't remember them because I get them off my chest, and then right? Does it make sense? And so that's kind of our management system, and it's led us to today.
Well, Jensen, I congratulate you on a Lifetime Achievement Award. Of course, I hope your lifetime doesn't end here and that the story continues. But thanks for chatting with us.
All right, thank you.